Thank you, members of the public, board members. Let's go ahead and get started. As mentioned before lunch, we are on agenda item 5, which is the Law and Licensing Committee report. However, I've got a couple of lights on and requests before we jump into that committee. So I'm going to first go to Member Earl, and then we'll go from there. So Member Earl.
Yes, I would like to bring back the R277625 mental health screeners. That's my motion. And if I need, can we speak to those, or is when you bring it back, can you speak?
Okay. So let me just make sure. I'm going to turn to this because this is something that failed on our agenda. You guys, Member Earl, you were on the prevailing side, which that motion failed. And so the motion then is to bring back agenda item 3.8. This is R277-625, the mental health screeners rule. It's been seconded. Do you want to speak to that, Member Earl?
Yeah, just real quick. Whether or not I agree with the policy or not is different than what the change was to the law. So that was when it failed, went back and did the double check on the law. They changed the provisions in there from 90% to as needed. In our rule, and that I think Board Member Green spoke to that, we added all these other pieces into it. You had to have this and this and this and that, right? All these different mechanisms. If brought back, I guess I would be making an amendment, just make people aware, that would put it so it aligns with law and doesn't go beyond the scope of the law.
Okay, so you want to bring it back to address some of the
I want to bring it back.
discrepancies between law and rule.
Yes.
Okay. So, Member Brinton, you have a light on. Are you from? Okay. So let me restate the motion then, and that is that the board bring back R277-625 for further consideration. Seeing no additional lights, let's vote.
Just clarification.
We're hearing that it needs to be a majority or super majority. It says majority vote. No super majority.
That's what I thought. It has to be a 2/3, right?
10 people. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's vote. So that passes unanimously with 2 absent. Okay. So it is back on the back before us then, and let me just restate what is back before us. The motion would be that failed, that came from committee, is that the board approve R277-625 mental health screeners draft 2 on second and final reading. It did not have any amendments. It just failed in its entirety. So here we are with that. Member Earl?
And I would like to make an amendment, and that would be to strike lines 143 through 152.
This should be draft 2, yes. I'm hoping that we can get that up here because, well, Member Earl, for your motion, we'll get to everything here. This is agenda item 3.8. Apologies.
That is my motion.
Your motion is to simply strike those lines. You're not adding anything? Okay. And then the lines stricken are on the screen, if we can fit them on there. Oh, and thank you, Jerry, IT crew. I didn't even recognize that I'm looking at this TV right in front of me. Okay, so the motion before us is to strike lines 143 through 152. Do we have a second? We have a second. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, let me speak to this. In the code, which is 53F to 522. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, 522. It just states when it's the distribution of the funds, the state board shall distribute the funds described in 5A as on an as needed basis and to the LEAs that are participating. And so that's what the language is here. We're not adding all this extra provisions and all these extra checks and stuff. It's just simply it's an as needed basis, which to me reads, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong, it reads that a participating LEA would say, this is why we need these. They would kind of justify their reason for using it, is what that would look like.
Okay, Member or Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the intent behind this to make sure we're in alignment with the code. If I may, through you, Chair, to the maker of the motion, if it then just reads, because if we were to take those lines out, it would just say, shall distribute funds on an as-needed basis to a participating LEA. So if an LEA then is trying to figure out whether or not they would qualify for this award, how would they know what criteria they would need to meet to be able to meet that? I just know that if districts are going to spend the time to apply or do all the paperwork, just wondering what's the criteria then?
And addition, before you answer, can I just tack on it? And how would the superintendency, if I'm understanding this correctly, know what that criteria is as well? You got both sides, right? Go ahead.
I don't know that I have all the answers to that, but it would be, in my view, it would be they would submit, if they're participating, they already have to say whether or not they're participating. Some schools choose not to participate, but then they would just indicate what they're participating, what they're using it for. So keep in mind the items that were listed there were not actually the number of consenting student or parents. It wasn't anything like that. It was expansion on mental health services, and which actually some of these things actually cost districts more money in order just to get the minimal amount for these screeners. So I don't know if staff have additional feedback on that. I've worked with them on this to align this better. So I don't know if anybody has any feedback they want to share on that. No, and that's okay. No, it's all right. I think they would it would be participation, and then they would share what they would be using the funds for, and then it would be as needed. So they would share how they'd be using them.
Okay. Do we have a follow-up, Member or Vice Chair Bollinger?
Yeah, just curious, was there a new law that was put into place this last legislative session that triggered this? I'm looking at the code.
That's what I'm reading. That's what I read.
And you said it was 53F to 522?
Yes, 522.5.
522.5.
Yeah, if you go down 522. Yes, 522. And if you go down to 5, section 5, it talks about the distribution. No, 53F2, 522. And then section 5.
That's what we had before.
Let me,
Can I comment?
yeah, I've got Vice Chair Wood, Member Lear. Go ahead, Vice Chair Wood.
Yeah, the change came in SB2, and they just eliminated those lines in code of the distribution of 90 and said the state board shall distribute the funds described in subsection 5A on an as-needed basis to a participating LEA. That came out of, yeah, it's not updated yet in the actual code, but it came in SB2.
Okay. Okay. Member Lear?
It was helpful to know where that came. So the board doesn't have specific direction to write a rule. But it feels like if the superintendent distributes on an as-needed basis, that means she would make the determination as to what is as needed without any criteria. Do we all agree that's what would happen?
That was my question. Same thing, like I don't know.
And are we going to be comfortable? I'm comfortable. I'm just wondering if we're going to have another discussion like that where board members are saying, well, I don't like why she gave that LEA that money. And I feel like we're putting her at a disadvantage without giving her some guidance, even though the board is not specifically directed to write a rule. And I'm not prepared to do that
we're not-
today. I'd like to hear from practitioners about what would be legitimate, important criteria. But I feel like we're putting the superintendent in a catch-22 by telling her as needed, as we're thinking, as you're thinking. I'm not comfortable with that.
Just to, maybe, I don't know if this is point of order or whatever, not point of order, but just information is that we had in there the 90%, it was taken out. So we do need to remove that, which leaves the as needed. And if the criteria that were there, I don't feel comfortable with. So if you want to try to pass that with that criteria again, you could do that. I don't think it's going to pass at all. So I just recommend.
Okay. Let me restate the motion then, and that is that the board strike some lines. Can we get that? The motion is that the board amend R277-625 Mental Health Screeners Draft 2 by striking lines 143 through 152. Seeing no additional lights, let's vote. That passes unanimously. This brings us back to the underlying motion, which is that the board approve R277-625 Mental Health Screeners Draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Let's vote. That passes 12 in favor, 1 opposed, that coming from Member Green. With that, I don't see any additional lights. Let's keep moving forward on the agenda. We are on agenda item 5, Law and Licensing Committee Report. So with that, we'll turn it over to Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. Just for the public's awareness, item 5.1 was public comment. There's no action for the board. Item 5.2 was our 2027 legislative policy request information. Deputy Nui presented the information sheet that the committee could use to make legislative policy requests. I would invite all the board members to look at that form as it seeks to bring a uniformity to the policy legislative policy request process. Item 5.3 is the committee report on law and licensing UPAC meetings. There are 2 reports, one from the chair, one from Member Lear. And again, I would urge all members to please review those reports in backup. And the first action item we have is item 5.4. That is the Iron County School District waiver request. And the motion before the board chair is that the board approve Iron County School District's request for a waiver from R277-419-4. I don't believe anyone is either present or online from Iron County. Oh, Superintendent is online. Okay. And Chair, just so you know, the motion passed out of committee 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion before the board is that the board approve Iron County School District's request for a waiver from R277-419-4. Member Green?
I just wanted to make a brief comment about the 4-day school weeks. I started to become concerned last year, actually, at the beginning of the year, because we saw an uptick in the requests for those, and I was alarmed at that. And I was kind of nothing short than devastated to see that that was coming from my school district. And I guess I just wanted to speak towards that in a different capacity. I think that I understand the arguments. I understand wanting to be accessible. I feel like Iron County, having lived there and grown up, and being an active part of, sports and drill and student government and all the activities that take you elsewhere. I never felt like the world outside of Iron County wasn't accessible. I was devastated when we went to a half day because I saw the learning loss that happened from that, and and they're saying that Friday is a useless day, which is the direct result of a half day. So I'd advocated, locally to reinstate a full day Friday, and I only know that or advocated for that because I believe, in some regards, more is better than less, and that it provided rigor, also within the context that they might consider implementing not the A-B day schedule, but rather all the classes in one day to give back our students the ability to be immersed in appropriate timeframes for learning. So, as I'm sitting here doing all I can, it's like the point of education is like water, holding water in your hand. We're lessening the time kids are in school, and an English class, instead of reading Odyssey, it's a graphic novel that's 15,000 words instead of 120,000 words. And the partnership with AI is that instead of teaching our children how to think and formulate beautifully written articles that come from their working minds that have been trained to do so by a rigorous academic environment. I advocate for this. I continue to. And I don't know how to stop the 4-day work week. And I say work week because the habit also actually, I think, will bleed into the workforce. If we want them to be workforce ready, it's a hard job to come by where it's 4 days a week. I know we would all love that. But reality is reality as well. I will commend Iron County. I feel like they did a beautiful job being very transparent, and reaching out to the community. They had a public comment at a variety of different schools so people could go make their voices heard. They sent out multiple surveys, so the information that you see here was definitely vetted and thorough, so I commend them for that. And obviously the opinions I share are just one of philosophical and one of advocating. So with that, I just maybe hope that as we move forward, we might consider what this trend actually is communicating to us, and as our vision and mission statements are trying to realign back to the purpose of why we send our children to school, that we can continue to fortify those reasons and not continue to water down the very important obligations we have with public education. Thank you.
Member Kelly?
I'm just, it feels like we've granted enough of these waivers and there have been enough schools on the 4-day schedule that we have some data coming back as to how those schools are performing, how they're comparatively attesting on RISE or other things. Is there somebody, maybe staff, that could speak to if we're seeing a difference between students who are on 4-day weeks versus students on 5-day weeks, and is there a significant difference between the two at this point?
Member Carey, you want to speak to that?
If I could, and not to preempt staff, and staff is certainly welcome to comment, but just, I think Board Member Kelly's correct. We have seen quite a few of these. Back to Board Member Longacre's Board Member thought. I wonder if we're as intentional as we need to be with these waivers. Our position as a committee has generally been, if the local board approves it, the teachers want it, the parents want it, the kids want it, we should not be a roadblock to that. But I will say that the data, because several of these waivers have been going on for several years, and the data that's been presented to the committee is generally that there is an upward trajectory in terms of academic achievement, in this sense of satisfaction and just general wellness in the school. But one thing that AAG Beal instituted was that was a form that these schools would have to fill out that would create a uniformity of results. Because right now it's been the school does its own type of survey, its own kind of feedback, and to create just more uniformity in the data. So now as these waivers are granted, each grantee is required to report back to the committee with certain data. And to address your question, as we assimilate that and put that together, I think we'll even have a better idea. But the general data, as it's been produced by the LEAs and the schools and districts that have requested it, generally upward trajectory, and I'd welcome anyone from the committee to address that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Member Lear.
I was the no vote on this discussion, and I did it with some uncertainty myself because and let me just explain a little bit of my thinking, and some of it was similar to what Emily said. We've seen a lot of these waivers, yes. However, about 90% of them have been for remote schools. Grouse Creek, Dugway, Grouse Creek,
Yep.
Hurricane, Grouse Creek. But a number of them have been for remote areas and remote schools. And there's not been, in my recollection, and I could be wrong about this because Wayne District did it at one point, but they're not district-wide. They're a school for a certain reason. There have also been some waivers for a few charter schools to align themselves with the universities that they're partnering with. So they've been for very specific purposes in very intentional kinds of ways. This is a district-wide waiver, which made me uncomfortable because Cedar City, and I'm no expert, but Cedar City doesn't seem totally rural to me, or everything is not so far away. So and I said this in the committee meeting, I would have preferred a pilot program with a couple of the distant schools. And I also find it sort of not persuasive to say, well, the parents wanted it. And I made the comment, what if we go to these 4-day weeks and put the day off at Wednesday, I wonder how many parents would still be excited about it. But the parents want it, the teachers wanted it, of course. Emily made the point, who would not want to work 4 days for the same amount of money? Because even in this discussion from Iron County, there were a lot of employee surveys that said, yeah, we like it as long as we make the same amount of money. Not if you start taking our money away, then we don't like it. My recollection about a number of these waivers is also a little different than Chair Carey's, in that most of them show, in my recollection of history, that it's a pretty flat trajectory. So they're not doing better. It's hard to say culturally, or is there more parent satisfaction? I can't speak to that, but in terms of their assessments, it's flat, and many of them even say, well, we're not doing any worse when they come back to re-up the waiver. So that's a little bit of a different recollection. And I still would probably prefer a pilot program of this before a whole district the size of Iron does this. I was particularly persuaded by Member Bollinger, who is launching into a new district and is a practitioner in a school herself, where she felt okay and comfortable, beyond okay. She felt comfortable with saying the community we should let them try this. This is probably a good thing. And I was quite persuaded by that. Still voted no. But I have reservations about just the 4 days is easier than for everybody, is easier than 5. It's cheaper. The legislature should love it. They don't have the transportation issues. I'm also concerned if there was a 4-day week with a strong 5th-day component of providing services to students who needed it, or if there was a real strong structure for that. I didn't feel like that has existed in many of the waivers we've seen, and it didn't exist here. And everybody says, or everybody, the people seeking the waivers say, well, yeah, we'll be able to provide services if an IEP requires it or something to that effect. But I am still really reluctant to say 4 days with a teacher is equal to 5 days with a teacher. So I just wanted to explain my no vote then, and I'm still not sure where I will go as a board vote. Doesn't matter, I'm one board member. But I just think it's important to think about why these waivers are being sought and the breadth of them.
Member Green?
And I appreciate what Member Lear also just, shared. And I know that, as a community, done a deep dive on all the different issues and scenarios that it presents as a community. There's one other major thing that is a hang up for me, and that is the actual law itself, Utah Code 53F2102, which is the minimum school program. My understanding is that there have been a couple attempts to change that so that a 4-day work week could just be onboarded as a schedule or adopted as an actual schedule. What this waiver is that of a waiver, so it has to keep coming back. So that's like, I believe, if I'm understanding it correctly, is a legislative issue. So this is a waiver that they will continue to have to come back to. I would love if we could address that. If that is something that we truly want as a state, I think that needs to come forward, and we need to have that debate as a state. Right now, I think we'll just continue to see a trend of requesting a 4-day waiver for LEAs or school districts at large, and see where that goes. But for me, I'm just at the back too, where I now have a comparison of a charter school that's 5 days, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, from 7:50 to 3:35 in the afternoon every week. And Wednesday and Thursdays from 7:50 to 2:35. And I will tell you that every minute is structured and every minute is utilized. And those students at their Show What You Know were stellar, inspired, and educated. And it's commendable. And it's just something that I'm advocating for public education. So,
Vice Chair Bollinger?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if you listen to our law and licensing committee meetings, it's no secret that I'm actually a fan of this 4-day week, and if you look at it as far as attendance, that's the one piece of data that does show an increase over all of the times people have come back to talk about the data that's had the most impact on its attendance. And I think that that's where some people feel like Friday's a waste, because if you're a general ed teacher and you have 35-40% of your students absent, it's hard to do good tier 1 instruction if you then have to figure out how to get that instruction to the students, because it doesn't take away your responsibility to teach your students. So that when we look at the waivers, a lot of times when we see the improvements, there are a lot of schools that have showed improvement. There are some that it's like been neutral, but the one piece of data that we consistently often see is an improvement in attendance, which does make a difference, I think, for students. And I was really impressed with this. This is a big test of our system. Iron County is a big school district. I was impressed that almost 80% of their educators voted for this. So it is also, if you look at research of what this does, it's also a good tool for retention. And then the secondary parents, it was almost 75% of secondary parents also voted for it. So if you look at the data of who wants to have it, this is where I feel like this should be a local control. Just because we passed this waiver, we actually had this discussion. Just because we passed this waiver does not also mean that now the district is going to make all their schools do this. The school board specifically asking for a waiver, they could then go back and decide if, depending on their own board decision, to only do it with a few of the schools, or they might decide to do it district-wide. This just allows them to have the opportunity. And going back to speaking exactly what Member Green was talking about as far as what the expectation is for participation in school in our state, we've had the 180-day waiver, or the 180-day rule, excuse me. Representative Welton's bill, where he put in that request for based off of instructional hours for a credit, opens the door to already change that and create a waiver. So even if we didn't approve this waiver, there's going to be opportunities for districts to use that as a roundabout way to then make that. So I agree with Member Green. This is a discussion that we should be having statewide, and as a state board, the legislature has given us the power to determine the number of days or the number of hours, and I do think it's something that we need to discuss and take that into consideration, especially when we're looking at the demand and the time and the energy it takes for us to go through all of these waivers. There's obviously a demand for something different than what we've been doing in education based on an industrial model of attending certain hours and certain days of the week. And if you look nationwide, every state has different requirements, but because this is something that the community is asking for and the school board's asking for, it's something that I do support that local control, and I would hope that you would as well. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion before us is that the board approve Iron County School District's request for a waiver from R277-419-4. Let's vote. That passes 11 in favor, 3 abstentions. Those abstentions from Member Wood, Member Bogus, and Member Green. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. The item is 5.5, Canyons School District Waiver Request. And the motion for the board is that the board approve Canyon School District's request for a waiver from R277-700-5 for the 2026-2027 school year, which may be extended through the 2028-2029 school year upon legislative changes. Chair, this passed out of law and licensing unanimously.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approve Canyons School District's request for a waiver from R277-700-5 for the 2026-27 school year, which may be extended through the 2028-29 school year upon legislative changes. Seeing no lights, let's vote. That passes 12 in favor, 1 abstention, that coming from Member Bogus. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. The next item is 5.6, Tooele County School District's waiver request. And the motion before the committee is that the board approve Tooele County School District's request for a waiver renewal from R277-419-4. Chair, this passed out of law and licensing unanimously.
Thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approve Tooele County School District's waiver or district's request for a waiver renewal from R277-419-4. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. The next item is 5.7, City Academy Waiver Request. The motion before the board is that the board approve City Academy's request for a waiver from R277-522-6, 9 for 1 year. Chair, this passed out of law and licensing unanimously.
The motion before the board is that the board approve City Academy's request for a waiver from R277-552-6, 9 for 1 year. Let's vote. That passes 12 in favor, 1 no vote. That no vote coming from Member Bogus. Over to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. The next item is 5.8 R277-322, Local Education Agency Codes of Conduct. There is no motion for the board this month. The next item is 5.9, and that is coaching, 5.9 R277-605, Coaching Standards and Athletic Clinics, Amendment and Continuation. The motion before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-605, Coaching Standards and Athletic Clinics, Draft 2, on second and final reading. And then I have a motion related to this matter. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that came out of committee is that the board continue and approve R277-605, Coaching Standards and Athletic Clinics, Draft 2 on second and final reading. Over to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. And I believe Deputy Newey has the motion to amend. And then with the chair's permission, I would like to speak to it.
Let's see if we can state this motion. Let me read it out loud. If this is what you've sent, I'm going to read it and then seek a second. So the motion for the board is that the board amend R277-605 Draft 2 by adding a new subsection 6 to section R277-605-4 to read as follows. 6A, a coach or designated school leader may not permit an additional adult or guest to travel with, lodge with, or accompany the team or student group during a school-sponsored activity unless the individual has successfully passed a criminal background check and ongoing monitoring through the employing LEA consistent with section 53G-11-402. And B, the background check requirement described in subsection 6A applies to any accompanying individual who is 18 years of age or older and is not a student currently enrolled in the LEA. Do we have a second? Okay. To you, Chair, to speak to it.
Thank you. This amendment came up in light of the recent incident involving an LEA where the background check was not performed on a volunteer, and the individual apparently or allegedly had a registered sex offender, or at least on that registry. And so this amendment is designed to address issues like that where we have someone that maybe isn't employed by the school, isn't necessarily volunteering with the school, but if you are accompanying or participating in that school event, we want to make sure that this background check is run and that it comes back in a way to provide that assurance that this individual would be appropriate to be on that trip. Thank you.
Member Bogus, to this motion or to the overall? Okay, go ahead.
To the maker of the motion, is there a reason we didn't just say in B, an individual who is not a student currently enrolled in the LEA? Period. Because there are students who go on these trips with other people. For example, my children, one of whom is over the age of 18, is a student and is or actually is under 18, is a student in another LEA that says he could travel with me on this, even if, and believe me, he's not, but even if he had circumstances such as you describe. And so it just, B causes me some consternation because a lot of teachers who travel with students will take their family with them. And so I'm wondering if we can't frame that language so that it encompasses a broader scope.
Chair. Thank you. Yeah, so this was something that staff and I reviewed at length. After several conversations, I I agreed with the assessment by staff that this was the most appropriate language. I would, with the chair's permission, ask staff to address the question with more particularity. But I can't remember the exact reasons, but at the time it was convincing why this language should be included. Thank you.
Elise, is that you? Are you staff at this?
Will be staff.
Okay.
Thank you. So we cannot do background checks for people under the age of 18 because of juvenile justice laws. So that's why we included that. If there are additional things that an LEA wanted to do or to put into place or to deny them completely, they could do that. But that is why we don't include that here.
Interesting. Is there any reason we couldn't put in an LEA?
Are you?
I guess that question is directed towards staff, Chair.
Sure.
In an LEA, so that because there are flags on kids in school systems who have backgrounds that could put them in a place where other students are at risk. But when they're in the LEA, there's a flag on them. When they're not enrolled or they've unenrolled themselves from school, that's different.
Elise?
We're trying to decide how that would change it. Because you wouldn't be able to look them up in the school system if they were not in your LEA. So I guess I'm just trying, what is the intent? And maybe we can think of something that would work.
Well, the intent would be if a student has been expelled from an LEA for any reason and they're not enrolled in a traditional LEA for whatever reason that might be, then they would be prohibited from attending this. Unless I'm reading the language wrong.
So this is just who they can do a background check on.
So we would need to
In the
add
section.
language to cover that.
I think so. I think that would have to be another,
That would need to be a C.
perhaps, or change something about A.
Do you have a potential amendment?
Yeah. Okay, so I would move to amend that may not permit an additional adult or guest not presently enrolled or employed by an LEA. Enrolled in or employed by something to that effect. Come again, I'm so sorry. I think right after the word guest, we could insert language such as enrolled in or employed by an LEA. Because if they're employed by another LEA, they've passed a background check, and if they're enrolled in school, it would give us cause to reason that they have not been expelled for reasons that would violate the spirit or intent of this amendment. Is that what you were thinking, Superintendent Newey? May not permission. So am I hearing you in a roundabout way saying you'd rather put a C on this? Because I thought I heard you say you wanted me to amend A, and now I'm hearing you say you would rather I just put a C on this.
Particular change, because of it being at the top, it would then require that those people be background checked, right? So those who are enrolled in or employed by the LEA would then have to be background checked, which I think is the opposite of what you're trying to say, is that they either have to be background checked or they're an employee of the LEA, so we already know their status, or they are a student of the LEA, so we already know their status, right? So those would be like the three instances in which a person could be an accompanied guest. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just wondering how we cover these instances.
So if we say, okay, what if we said, we can also do this offline. A guest who is not enrolled in or employed by the LEA, and then those would be the exceptions. Everybody else would have to be background checked. Does that make sense?
Not in this moment, but
We can keep talking. if
at
you
a
want,
high
come
level,
back.
it sounds like what you're trying to say is that they would be covered under the exemptions.
Yes.
And so all those who are not enrolled in an LEA would be subject to a background check.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or
I
over
would,
18.
that's fine with me. However you want to fix that, that's great.
What are we doing here? Are you asking Elise to create an amendment to this motion?
I think she just did.
Okay. And this is still in A, is that correct?
Yes.
So is this?
Unless I misunderstand Deputy Superintendent Nui.
So you want to amend 6A of Member Carey's motion to include who is not enrolled in or employed by an LEA. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the amendment before us. Do we have a second? There's a second. Do you want to speak to that?
I think it's kind of covered in the conversation, so I would pass.
Okay. Member Lear, to this motion or to the other one?
No, different issue.
Different issue. Okay. Then let's prepare to vote on this one. Again, the amendment is to include in 6A the verbiage "who is not enrolled or employed by an LEA." With that, Member Earl?
Yeah, just looking. If you're looking at B, I'm just trying to correlate it with if we make this amendment. In B, it says that the background check requirement in 6A applies to any accompanying individual who is 18 years of age or older and is not a student currently enrolled in the LEA. So it seems to be duplicative, but I'm trying to parse out the nuance, right? Versus the duplicativeness, or why we're saying it twice. And maybe I'm kind of missing a little bit of something. Because we're already saying, we're saying who's not enrolled who's not enrolled or employed, but then down below, which the employment would already rule out doing a background check because they have to be background checked to do that. And then at the bottom, we're saying the same thing. So I don't know if we're just duplicating what we're already saying. Maybe I'm wrong, but.
I hear you. I see it. I just don't know what problem that's on. Yeah. Member Reel?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question maybe for Elise or maybe for our AAG. When we say accompanied, I'm worried that maybe this is too broad because it could mean if a bunch of students are going to DC on a flight, does that mean we need to do background checks of all the adults that are also on the flight? Does that mean if we're at an event that they need to have background checks of everyone that are at an event? So does that language open us up to some liability in those public spaces when it comes to the word accompanying? Because traveling with does mean everyone traveling with them on a plane, or I'm not sure if anyone, I don't want to set our LEAs up for any liability if the language is that in a way that might, do we need to be more specific? If so.
A company in that sense means somebody that's actually on that trip, not that's just happens to be on the plane or happens to be in the activity. It's part of the group. And I think there's potential for other issues with that too, because what do you do with somebody who is going but not accompanying the students on their, I don't know that you've got to the point of excluding every potential possibility for something to go awry, and I don't know that you can get there that way. But I don't think that accompanying causes you problems on trains, planes, or buses or things of that nature.
Yeah, or even after a game, if like they're there as to cheer on someone and they're there.
Yeah, if they didn't come with the students, hang out with the students, participate in the activities with the students, I don't think they're actually accompanying the students.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that it's not, vague enough that we can set our LEAs up for any liability in that way.
I can assure you that lawyers will find it vague.
Yes. Okay, I figured.
Thanks.
Okay, so the motion before us is to include the wording in 6A, who is not enrolled in or employed by an LEA. Are you back to this? Okay. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
So I would argue that I think Member Earl is correct. I don't think that I think it is duplicative, but I still don't know how we're going to prohibit people from taking kids who have committed heinous acts within our schools and been expelled or whatever for those reasons from accompanying people on trips. We still have an issue that we need to address, but I would agree with Member Earl that as that is written, it is duplicative. So without objection, I would withdraw the motion. I have another motion if we're interested, but I don't know that it solves the problem either, but I'd like to put it out there for discussion.
Is there any objection to this motion, this amendment being withdrawn? Not seeing any, let's move forward. I'm going to just take a minute to speak against this motion. I see what the motion, not Member Bogus's, that's poof, gone, right? But I've got Member Carey's motion here, and I see what needs to be done, and I see what he's doing, and I agree with that. However, I'm trying to reconcile with some of the issues that kind of have been asked here. To scroll down to see the entire motion, if you could. I don't know what that looks like when it comes to bringing your family, and I recognize that this was part of the issue, is that family was brought, right? But were they accompanying the team, or were they just going to support a loved one? And so I don't know if this, to me, this is if the school board wants a policy, I think we need to say to LEAs, develop a policy. How are you going to protect your kids? Because I agree it needs to be addressed. I don't know if this is going to just fix this, because there are so many questions that are going to be asked along with this, right? And quite frankly, LEAs are encouraging as many people as possible to go to these events and to support students. And how do we keep the bad actors out? I don't know. I think this is a good step or a good shot at this. I just don't know if this is the right solution at the time. I think it's going to take some thought, and I know that there has been thought when I look at what Chair Carey has been working on. This isn't new to his mind, right? And it's not new to any of ours, but I just don't know if this is the complete answer at this time. So with that, we've got this motion before us. Member Carey's motion. I know Member Bogus, you said you had another motion potentially. I've got Member Lear in the queue as well.
Well, I would offer a second amendment that I think could possibly fix the issue, and that would be to strike the word accompany from the motion. And if this fails, we could define it, but the definition is already inherent within the motion.
So your motion is to simply strike the word accompany.
Well, I would have to see the motion again. I think it has some extraneous language there. So it'd be to travel or lodge with, and then strike or accompany.
Is that your motion then, to strike or accompany?
Yes, and we'd have to strike the with on travel so that it was grammatically correct. To travel or lodge with.
Okay, so the motion then is to strike with after travel and or accompany. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second? You have a second? You want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think if we were to describe a company in this context, we would use the language to travel alongside or lodge with. I think that's how we would define it for school purposes. You're riding the bus, you're staying in accommodations that are paid for with some sort of district fund or pass-through fund. And some of those funds for athletics and other activities are pass-through funds that are fundraised by a PTA or a booster club. And so if they're traveling with them, they would be formally, I don't know why these people still call me. I have no clue. I tried to shut it off. I did. Believe it or not, I've asked the masters how to fix my phone. It never goes silent. So I think that just skipping the word accompany would fix what we're trying to address. I think along is already in there, isn't it? Isn't it in the original motion, member Brenton? Maybe I wrote it down incorrectly because I thought it should be there. But if we could scroll down to the original motion. To travel or lodge with the team. Yeah, I don't think we need the word along.
Member Lear?
I had a somewhat different issue, but it relates very closely to this new motion of Member Bogus's. I think that the problem I initially have with this, and being very familiar with this situation, the school leader did not permit this, and I don't want it. Did not permit the situation that evolved. He wasn't aware of it, and I think that what I don't want is the unintended consequence of it reading this way. Something like what happened, and then there be a punishment for the coach if licensed or designated school leader, because the school leader wasn't even informed. As we're discussing this, it also, another kind of related unintended consequence is all of us are thinking about buses and trains and planes, but not automobiles, where you could have this happening and maybe at the last minute that the coach or the designated school leader agrees to take 2 students home, but maybe has a spouse or a partner who has a problem with, and it's unexpected and they're in an automobile. So I think this needs more work. And I am especially concerned that a designated school leader might find himself facing discipline when she was never informed about the person accompanying. And because it's not, although it is technically public information, it's not usually widely well known who's on the sex offender registries in various communities. So I'm equally concerned about accusations that someone did it intentionally. I think, I mean, and I had sort of a possible amendment or alternative motion that would make it the responsibility of the coach or the school employee that invites someone to not allow this to happen. But I think personally this just needs more thought and work because we've got to deal with automobiles as well as other kinds of transportation.
Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate Member Carey bringing this to the attention of the board because, I mean, obviously, we want to keep our students safe. That's been a priority for us as board members. I think my concern with when we're talking about how this is written, when we talk about we can't permit people to travel with, lodge with, I tend to agree with Chair Hymas where it leaves a lot of ambiguity there, where if I'm a coach, which I've been in the past, and I'm sure, Member Kelly has had this experience as well, then does that make me responsible for everybody that's going to stay in the same hotel, grandparents, relatives, people that just show up? Then the way that this is written, I'm curious to know if then that becomes our responsibility to make sure everybody's background check. When I look at LEAs, and typically LEAs have specific rules and policies for this, and I was looking up a few of the ones where basically in a district that I think has a great policy, it says if a volunteer will have significant unsupervised access to students as an advisor or supervisor, that the individual should have a criminal background check. So at the district level, they are then creating boundaries with this. When we leave it this broad that anytime they go to a school-sponsored activity, I don't believe that we can have one person be responsible for everybody that comes and participates or that comes and watches or supports. There's just so many unanswered questions with this. So although I do appreciate the intent of it, I do see districts that have things in place that address this specifically. And so I just am concerned about the broadness of the statement.
We are semi-combining motions here because we've got what we have on the table before us is the motion to amend, which is to strike with after lodge or with after travel, and then strike or accompany. So I've got Member Bogus and Member Carey. Is it to this motion, to the overall Member Bogus to this motion? Okay. Let's spend your time speaking to it, not arguing.
I won't argue with you, Chair. I just think that every time I've ever traveled with students, whether it was at the secondary level or at the elementary level, I had to fill out a form. And I had to list every student and every adult that was traveling with us, whether it was a member of my family, if it was a 7-hour drive and my husband was going with us, whatever it was. I had to submit a list to the LEA, and that had to be submitted before they allowed us to depart campus. And the pickup was always on campus, and we always returned to campus. And I've never had an experience where that didn't happen. And so I do think that the designated school leader does need to stay in this. I just think the word accompany makes it too broad because people show up to things, and sexual offenders are already not allowed on school campuses, but they show up to basketball and football games all the time. And that puts it in the hand of law enforcement, not in the hands of coaches. And so I think just striking the word accompany addresses so many of the issues that are being brought up. So thank you.
Member Lear to this motion or to the overall? Okay. So I'm not seeing any additional lights for this motion. Let's go ahead and address this one. Again, the motion to amend is to strike with after travel and strike or accompany. So let's go ahead and vote on this amendment. That motion passes 11 in favor, 1 abstention, 2 no votes. The abstention from Member Davis, the no votes from Member Reel and Member Lear. Okay. So that brings us to the overall motion. No, we haven't. Oh, yeah, not the overall. Member Carey's amendment, yes. And so I've got Member Carey's light on and then Vice Chair Wood.
And Chair, what are we speaking to?
Your original motion as amended.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I do think, and I appreciate the, the words of caution, that we want to make sure that LEAs aren't put in jeopardy or in a bind, but there's another group of people that I think we have to think about, and those are the 700,000 plus students that we have. And remember, they're not volunteers or they've decided to go to school. The law requires them to be there, right? And generally, most go to the school that they're assigned to. And for us not to take every possible precaution to protect those students, I just don't see it. I understand the concerns. I think that possibly a little conflated and maybe inflated. But the fact that any district would not have a policy on this, I think is shocking. I was surprised when, I read the article in the newspaper and they asked USBE for a comment. Anybody remember what our comment was? Our comment was no comment. Well, I think the comment should have been, this is wrong. We're not going to have registered sex offenders on trips involving our kids and accompanying employees of the school. And so what we're seeing now is we're just seeing this expansion. Chair Hymas and Vice Chair Bollinger both expanded the narrative beyond the confines of the proposed language. Right? We're not talking about volunteers. We're not talking about just showing up at an event. These are the words that were used. Right? This is a certain designated group of people. And so I'm sympathetic to possibly the money aspect, right? We don't want schools being sued. But there's another way for an LEA or school to get sued, and that's gross negligence. That's disregarding known dangers. And I think that's what happens when we don't take the care and caution that we need and emphasize the role that we have in protecting the students. Thank you, Chair.
Member Wood, Vice Chair Wood.
Chair, through you to Member Carey, I absolutely agree with the criminal background check. Can you help me understand the and ongoing monitoring? I'm just thinking about, I rode the bus with my son to Phoenix for Nike Nationals. I'm on the bus. I've had the criminal background checked. What is the ongoing monitoring that is expected here?
Chair Carey.
Yeah, do you mean by USBE, by the LEA? Well, my answer to you, Vice Chair Wood, would be, it's interesting that all of a sudden you're concerned about monitoring, because one of the great gaps that we have here at USBE is this lack of internal controls and monitoring. But when it comes to protecting our students, to get religion all of a sudden and focus on, and I appreciate the smile. I don't think it's funny.
Thank you for
I don't think it's funny, but you asked me a question and I'm answering.
I did ask you a question
And
because
so
I
I'm
wanted to know what you
responding.
meant by and ongoing monitoring.
And I'm
So demean
responding.
me in saying that I do not care about monitoring. I'm asking what type of monitoring you are asking for. That is a clear question that does not require any demeaning on your part. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry that you consider accountability demeaning. And I didn't say that. What I said was, I think it's interesting that all of a sudden you emphasize monitoring. That hasn't always been your battle cry. And so my position on the monitoring is, this is a local issue. Let the LEAs address it. Some of them haven't. So we have to step in and we have to address it. If you have thoughts on how this should be monitored, you are more than welcome to make that motion. Thank you, Vice Chair Wood.
Member Lear.
To the point of coach it is very often a volunteer, is not always paid, and is not often licensed. So at least it should be, I guess what I'm saying is I have a motion, I have an amendment to the motion, so that only, not every coach is equally responsible for this. At least it should be a licensed coach. And
What would your motion, sorry, what would your motion, how would your motion read?
yeah, you'll make a motion to that. I'm trying to decide, because license doesn't cover the coaches that are credentialed through USSAA. But the board has no authority over those coaches unless they are licensed. So I'm wrestling with how to take the volunteer coach out of coach. If any staff person has a suggestion, I'm open to that. I just think that we need to put those who are licensed into at least in at a higher level, a higher bar. But that goes back to my point that I made earlier, and I don't want to get into the specifics of this case because there's enough rumor and rumor mongering to go around. But I think that the individual who should be responsible is the person who does the inviting. When it's so hard to know who's coming and who's going on these chaperone trips. So that goes nowhere, I'm saying. But I think we need to modify coach, and I would rather rework this to make the person responsible the one who does the inviting.
Just say that you're in favor of delaying this.
And I'm in favor of delaying this, by the way. But Sarah has a comment too that goes to this issue, but you can call on her.
So, sorry, I've got this line up, and again, the vice chairs don't get to get in the queue, as you can see, but I have, after member Lear, I've got member Bollinger, and then I've got member Reel and member Kelly, my apologies.
Thank you, Chair. If I may direct a question to staff, is there a time constraint on this rule that needs to be passed this month?
Elise?
This rule is coming to you for a 5-year continuation, so we do need it continued today in order for it to not lapse into sunset. It's where. Oh, so we would need to continue it at least today, but we could bring it back on another month for changes if we just continue it as is, and then we could bring additional changes at another time and think more deeply. That would work.
Can we go back to the original motion, please?
Elise, can you scroll to the original motion? Or, yeah,
We're still on Chair Carey's
member
motion.
Carey's, original, the motion, this motion. Member Bollinger is going to come back. She's going to think about if she wants to take any action. So next we have member Reel.
Thank you, Chair. I rarely make amendments or motions in this board, but I'd like to talk about civility and respect for each other as board members, because I can't just continue on making motions and changing this after watching the disrespect that I continually see often with each other. If you make an amendment or a motion, you should be able to talk about it. And it for me to just sit here and continue moving forward with that after watching an disrespect of staff and board members continually, it's really frustrating. So, Chair, I'd like to ask for some civility or possibly some rules or some accountability with board members on how they treat each other and how we respect each other's opinions and motions and questions when someone makes a motion. It's absolutely appropriate to ask questions about motions. And I I believe in civility. I believe in disagreeing better. And I believe in being able to work through this together. I think we come out with good work, and I like that about our board. But I would like the chair to exercise some sort of control or accountability for board members when they disrespect each other that way. In that way, it feels really inappropriate. I'm tired of it at this point. Thanks.
Be nice to each other. I don't know what else to say. We're trying to get work done, and this is heavy work, and this is work that needs to be addressed. And I agree. I don't think disrespect has a part at this table here. And if somebody takes a question, even if it is pointed at somebody, I would hope that we wouldn't take it personally. And if we don't want to answer the question, then let's not answer the question. Right? If I feel slighted by somebody's question, then I'm not going to answer, and that's okay. I am not that chair who is going to monitor your every word and frustration with one another. I am not going to do that. We are adults. I hope we act like adults. And I know if we're talking about Vice Chair Wood and Member Carey, that they are adults and they may or may not like each other. I don't know. I hope that civility does take place at this table. But you have not seen, nor probably will you see me step in and say, stop it, be nice. I would hope that we would be mature enough to do that on our own. And again, I get that emotions run high. It's no surprise. We're talking about an incident where a sex offender was put in a place around students. And if that doesn't get emotions going, then I don't know what else does, especially for this group here. So yes, I agree with you 100%. I don't know if it's worth us taking the time. Like, we can take breaks and we can say, hey, cool off. But I'm not sure what kind of leadership you are asking for when I have to step in for a comment that I feel is pointed at somebody else, or somebody else feels is pointed at somebody else. Because there have been many times where I've thought that's inappropriate. There's been many times where I've sat here thinking we've wasted a lot of time on topics that we shouldn't be spending a lot of time on. As a reminder, it is 3:55. We are on our noon agenda item. So yeah, there's frustrations throughout this entire process, but we have to do the work. We get to do the work, and that's what we're here to do. So yeah, I would agree. Please be kind to one another. Don't assume that you're being attacked. Assume that questions are being asked. I know I shouldn't advocate for somebody. Carolyn Charette, she taught me as an early educator and administrator, assume goodwill. And that's what I've tried to do here. Even when it's clearly not goodwill, we have to assume that we're trying to get the work done here. So with that, if we could, I know we are right in the middle of this discussion. We're going to take 5 minutes, talk to each other, if you will, or go to a corner and let your heart rate come down. But let's take a few minutes, get your minds together, understand that nothing is perfect that we do here. And if you're seeking perfection, then you're in the wrong space. But we can come to consensus and we can get there. It takes 8 people, not one. It takes 8. Hopefully we can get to where it's 15. But with that, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene. Thank you. Okay, look at that. We still have 5 minutes. We never, we did start the timer. It's just, I'm sorry. Okay. So let's get back to where we were here. We have a motion from Chair Carey, and I'm going to restate the motion just so that we're all on the same page. It has been amended once. The motion is that the board amend R277-605 draft 2 by adding a new subsection 6 to section R277-605-4 to read as follows. A coach or designated school leader may not permit an additional adult or guest to travel with, lodge travel or lodge with, I know we made that motion there, to travel or lodge with the team or student group during a school-sponsored activity unless the individual has successfully passed a criminal background check and ongoing monitoring through the employing LEA consistent with Section 53G-11-402. B, the background check requirement described in subsection 6A applies to any accompanying individual who is 18 years of age or older and is not a student currently enrolled in the LEA. That is the motion that is before us. There has been some discussion on it. We have next in line, we have Member Kelly, and then Member Davis, and then Member Bogus. Member Kelly.
I'm going to try to simplify this, and I hope that what I say will maybe bring some clarity. But I'm going to speak as a coach who has been on lots and lots of trips with my athletes, many times out of state, many times in state, overnight trips, and I recognize that what we're trying to do here is make sure that those students are who we're looking out for, and making sure that we have policy in place that if a leader, if a coach, or as this is saying, a coach or a designated school leader invites or permits somebody who does not have a criminal background check to be with the kids and to associate, and then it's later found out that that person is a pedophile, it can't go without accountability. And so I think that this is important for us to address. So I'm gonna there's just a couple words that I think may fix this. So I'm gonna start with the word permit. If I am, let's say, I was just at Pit Bowl last night, so I'm gonna say the Holiday Inn. If you know Pit Bowl, you know the reference to the Holiday Inn. Okay, there we go. There's a few. Thank you. But if we're staying at the Holiday Inn as a team, I'm going to arrange for my coaches and my athletes the exact number of rooms that I'm going to need at that hotel. But what I cannot control is if parents choose to stay in the same hotel as we're staying in. And so I really don't have the right to permit them or to not permit them to stay at the same hotel. But I've made arrangements for my coaches and my athletes to stay at that hotel. But what I've done there is invited them, not necessarily permitted them. And so I'm going to propose that we change the word permit to invite, because as the designated leader or the coach, I invited my assistants or any volunteers to stay with my team. And so I'm going to make a motion that we strike permit and change that to invite. That was also at the recommendation of Board Member Davis. We thought that was a better choice of words. But then as the school leader, once I have made that list, I know who is coming on that trip, and I have made sure that everybody on that trip has a background check. The ongoing monitoring is no longer my responsibility. They have had a background check. If that person were to go on another trip with another group down the road in the future, that's the LEA or the new leader's responsibility to make sure that person has a background check. And so the ongoing monitoring, I know that Board Member Wood was asking about. I think that those two words are just out of context, and so I would move to strike ongoing monitoring from this motion. So changing permit to invite and striking ongoing monitoring would be my motion. And ongoing monitoring, correct? Yeah.
So the motion to amend, and again, this is an amendment to an amendment, so we can't amend your amendment any further.
All right.
But the motion is to strike permit from the amendment and replace with invite, and then also strike and ongoing monitoring. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do we have a second? There's a second to that. Do you want to speak? I know you somewhat spoke to that.
Okay. So I think I'm good.
I've got members Bogus, Davis, and Vice Chair Bollinger in the queue. Is it to this motion, or should I keep you in the queue for next motion? This one? So Bogus, I have you first. This one or the next one? Member Davis, you're up next, so go ahead.
Oh, just, it makes sense the words ongoing monitoring were there, but in this particular amendment may not need to be, because the ongoing monitoring in the code is for continuous, like coaches, volunteers, teachers, whatever, that are there continuously. And so if we're talking about in the amendment about a trip or a travel experience, then that every new teacher or coach that does a single trip is going to have to check that there's a background check. And I just signed up for my daughter's choir trip, and the teacher was like, get in there. Yeah. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm background checked, but they were persistent and I had to go do it again. So I do think that's an important responsibility, but for this isolated trips, I think that comes with the background checks.
And Vice Chair Bollinger to this motion.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate this motion, Member Kelly. I think it does address several of the concerns that I've had, and changing the word from permit to invite kind of clarifies then, because definitely we don't want to be using taxpayer dollars to provide rooms for individuals that are sex offenders, nor do we want those individuals with our team. So I think that piece helps clarify that, because we also can't control all the people that come and stay at the same hotel or come to all the events. So I appreciate your motions. Thank you.
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support both of these amendments, and I'm grateful for Board Member Kelly and his experience as a coach, bringing that wisdom to the table. And I think that we all are passionate about protecting our students, and that has to be paramount. And so when people prioritize money and they prioritize LEAs being sued over student safety, I will not accept that as an argument. I understand the wisdom of it as a practicing attorney in the past. I get it, but that is a weak argument. Our focus has to be on protecting these students. I was stunned to learn that any district, I think it was it the Salt Lake City School District that didn't have a policy in place? Is that where this came from? I was stunned. And I was equally stunned when this body, USBE, said, well, we have no comment. Yeah, we do have a comment, and that comment is we're going to protect our students. And I think that this language and this motion accomplishes that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so the motion to amend is to strike permit from the amendment and replace with invite, and additionally strike and ongoing monitoring. So let's vote on that. I believe Member Wood is joining us online. Member Wood, do you vote? Okay. So I believe that passes unanimously with 2 absent. So we have a new motion before us, an amended amendment. And with that, we will move back into the queue that we had, and we've got Member Bogus next.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that we postpone this entire agenda item from its current state to tomorrow's unfinished business section.
There's a motion to move to tomorrow's unfinished business. It's been seconded. Do you want to speak to that?
I would. I think we have a lot of work to do on this. I have at least 3 motions that I've discussed with our staff, and I think that to do that well and to do it correctly and mitigate the extraneous conversation that would accompany that, we need to give our staff overnight to prepare that and to ensure that we get this done in the most efficient manner possible.
Member Carey?
I'd just like to amend the motion.
Okay.
And I would just like to include that that the matter be tabled, but all those motions that have been submitted to staff be provided to the board in advance. And I defer to staff as to the timing. I don't understand the nature and extent of the motions, but if they're already typed up, I would say, by 6 p.m. tonight or close of business tonight. But I would like to see the motions in advance of tomorrow.
Chair, may I?
And if somebody could type that up.
I
Thank
didn't.
you.
I didn't make a motion to table, just as a point of information. I made a motion to postpone.
Okay. So the motion to postpone, and then we have a motion to amend. And yeah, it hasn't been seconded. We don't have a amendment
Carol
on there
seconded it.
yet.
I seconded yours.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Thank you, Carol.
And then, so Member Carey's motion is to amend to say postpone until tomorrow, but provide board
And that,
members
and that
with
the
those.
board be provided with the motion submitted by Board Member Bogus. How long can they be? By 6 p.m. this evening?
I think we should give our staff at least until noon tomorrow, because they'll be working in this meeting. I think noon tomorrow is pleasant. Unfinished business will start around 2 tomorrow.
I guess the point of clarity that I'm seeking is, do you have the motions or not? If you have them and you said, I've got 3 motions to make, do you have them or are they not? Do you have ideas for
I've
them?
discussed with staff, and they asked for the evening.
Chair, it was my understanding that the motions were provided. To the extent that they're not, then I would oppose the motion to postpone. It was my understanding the motions were ready. We could review those, but as they're being discussed, again, I think we're in a position to decide this matter today, one way or the other, and we should do that. Thank you.
So, yeah, so I believe you said your motion is you'll remove that and then you spoke against the motion to postpone. Is that correct? Okay. As that was not seconded, we are in a good place to do that then. So the motion then that we will vote on is to postpone this agenda item, which is 5.9, to tomorrow's unfinished business. Let's go ahead and vote. And do we want to, Member Wood, are you available for a vote? Not hearing anything. That motion passes 8 in favor, 5 opposed. Those opposed are Member Earl, Member Hymas, Member Brenton, Member Hall, and Member Carey. So with that, Chair Carey, we go back to you as part of the report out.
Thank you, Chair. The next item before the body is item 5.10, R277-317, incentives for national board certification. The motion before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-317, incentives for national board certification, draft 2, on second and final reading. This motion passed out of law and licensing unanimously.
Thank you. The motion before the board that came out of committee is that the board continue and approve R277-317, incentives for national board certification, draft 2, on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, let's vote. Vice Chair Wood online. Okay, that motion passes. 9 in favor, 1 abstention, 3 no votes. The abstention coming from Member Earl, the no votes from Member Green, Member Kelly, and Member Bogus. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you, Chair. This is item 5.11, R277-328, equal opportunity in education. The motion before the board is that the board continue R277-328, equal opportunity in education, on second and final reading, but I do have a substitute motion. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion that came out of committee then is that the board continue R277-328, equal opportunity in education, on second and final reading. Back to you, Chair Carey.
Thank you. There is a motion in backup. That is R277-328, draft 1, and the motion before the board that I would like to make is that the board continue and approve R277-328, equal opportunity in education, draft 1, on second and final reading. And then I would like to, is it draft 2 or draft 2? So to repeat that, Chair, it would be that the board continue and approve R277-328, equal opportunity in education, draft 2, on second and final reading. And then I'd like to speak to it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a second. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this used to be the DEI rule of the board. And because of legislation that was passed, a lot of the most offensive parts of the DEI effort was stripped out of this rule. But we still have this rule, and it still talks about equal opportunity in education. And I think a great opportunity presents itself to the board, and that is, since 1971, the Supreme Court has limited and really created a system in public schools where students of faith, students who wanted to exercise their right of conscience, were relegated to a second student status. And that was the Lemon Test, and it basically said if it has to do with religion, you've got to check it at the school door. You can't bring it inside. And that's been the governing law for our LEAs since 1971. Every policy, every consideration, every deliberation was built around this notion that if you had faith, you had to check it at the door. Well, that began to change about 3 or 4 years ago in a series of Supreme Court decisions that said, you know what? We got this wrong in 1971. And it has permitted and it has recognized that students of faith should not be treated as second-class students. And these decisions have made clear that, yeah, the coach, he can pray on the football field. That prohibition, that blanket prohibition against religion has been addressed by these 3 cases. And this rule presents this board with the opportunity to make sure that our educators, to make sure that our teachers, who now after 5 decades of being taught one way when it comes to faith, when it comes to religion in the schools and in the classrooms, that's evolved, that's changed. And this gives us the opportunity to make sure that our teachers and our educators know that. To be clear, what this rule does not do is it does not mandate or require a particular faith or a particular right of conscience be elevated or imposed in schools or in our LEAs, but rather this collective body of religious belief, right of conscience, has to be treated equally in our public schools. That's the purpose of the draft, and that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Member Earl?
Yes, just two provisions that were added in here. We previously had tried to do this definition of inclusion. In place of that, putting into the code the special education piece as well as the federal code. And this, I'm looking at line 25 and 26 that says full educational opportunity for students with disabilities is outlined. And then further, this language is taken right from some of the items we have posted from our staff from USBE. And so that's lines 75 through 78. Use that language so that it's, let me just read it just because I think it's valuable. Promote effective instructional practices and inclusive teaching applications that include intentionally and purposely creating, designing, and developing learning opportunities that ensure all students, regardless of their background, skill, or developmental level, can benefit from the least restrictive learning environment. So it does have those key pieces in there for special education and for students that have those diverse needs.
Member Lear?
Thank you. This rule came to the committee last month as a very simple continuation, and it was supported and discussed in the committee as a very simple continuation. And then, to my dismay, I saw 2 days ago that this was no longer a straightforward continuation, but rather there's a lot of new language in here. And my concerns are largely practical, and they're similar to some of the concerns that some of the committee members of the Law and Licensing Committee have raised as it relates to 322, R277 322. As I read this previously, the old rule, it says on line 48, an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators concerning, and then it goes on with some language. And now the new rule would say an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff with a whole new set of criteria. And I do suggest that they are quite a bit different. And I'm concerned about the cost to the USBE if the USBE should provide a model policy. It doesn't say that in here, but give guidance to LEAs. And that certainly takes USBE time and cost. As 160 LEAs would now have to revise training. Maybe they would say develop new training to meet these new requirements, not all of which I would agree are required under the law. And I really don't agree with taking equal opportunity out, because that's what the law in many places, the federal law uses equal opportunity. So to just decide we're going to call it opportunity, I think is presumptuous and taking away from what the federal law requires. So I don't disagree that perhaps some of this information in the future should be discussed with LEAs, but to mandate this at a time when LEAs are already creating 30-ish or dealing with, let me not exaggerate, are dealing with 30 new pieces of legislation. And some of those require policies, some of them require new training, that to add this to the burden of LEAs when the training that we have is very good and very adequate. And I don't, and as another attorney, I don't agree with Chair Carey's characterization. I was actually teaching in public schools in the early 1970s, and there was ample opportunity, even then, for students to express their religious preferences. Now, as a teacher, I knew I could not, but there were students praying in locker rooms because they volunteered to pray and they chose to pray together. There were students praying in different contexts and expressing their points of view that were often religious. So I don't disagree that I disagree that that students who were religious were second-class citizens. The ones I worried most about in my teaching experience, even as a very young teacher, were those who came and were sidelined or not included because they had no religion at all. But in some cases, most cases, were very good, moral young people. And so I don't agree that students who are religious were relegated to a different status. They had every opportunity to express their points of view. And that's a little more substantive. But I am mostly concerned about imposing this requirement for different training on LEAs right now. And if you look at the analysis under R277-322 for what it would cost an LEA to create a new policy, you can see that it's a substantial fiscal burden as well as a time and energy burden in the light of all of the things that LEAs are doing in response to legislation. So my biggest concern is that this is taking place right now and an imposition on LEAs.
Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions to the drafters of this rule, if I may. On line 75, I'm curious to know what inclusive teaching applications means.
Which one? Jenny, you got that?
Like I said, I'm taking this right from our language that we have on our site under inclusive practices. So if you'd like to, I can send you that location so you can see what those things are. I can do that. I'll send that to you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. And may I have a follow-up, please? The other thing is, and I don't mind the addition of, making sure that teachers are trained on making sure that students have their constitutional protected rights of religion. I thought that was already addressed in what line 60 said, where the recognizing the constitutionally protected rights of all students was included in the training, and don't mind adding additional detail. My concern is all of the parts that we have now gotten rid of, and maybe the makers of the draft can help me understand, why do we not want training on lines 52 through 62 anymore? Why did we, instead of just adding some things, why were we striking, what's the purpose of striking this other wording? Do we not want to have training for identifying additional academic supports, or having educated or just students with disabilities educated with students without disabilities? Okay, so if that's the piece, the part for me, I think that's really hard is, as a practitioner, the specific wording that it has in here, and I'll give you an example. On lines 58 through 59, specially designed instruction is provided in addition to, not instead of, high quality core instruction as consistent with IDEA. Our educators need that specific language to understand that it's not in place of, but it's in addition to. And so for me, the wording that was in here is the specific language that I think that educators need to know what is applicable in practice. And so I don't feel comfortable striking this language because of the need to be that specific. And I don't believe, if was the goal to have lines 75 through 78 cover all of that? Was that the intent? I was just asking, was the intent of lines 75 through 78 to replace all of the special ed training pieces?
to replace the training ed special. Can I ask a separate question? And this is maybe going to our staff. Is this the only place, 328, that we're going to actually talk about special education? I actually find it interesting that it's in here in some ways, other than it's a diversity piece, right? That's kind of why it's in here. Other than that, I'm like, if this weren't here, would we do this? We're already doing this. So it's kind of interesting that we're putting it we're doing it in all these other areas, and then we're going to go ahead and silo it here. So if this were, and I'm not saying that still that piece is in there, but I'm trying to understand kind of where you're coming from. Like this is a specialized training, and we're including special education or students with disabilities, right?
I could be wrong, but isn't this because it's a holdover from when we originally did 328? People were confusing inclusion with inclusion for special ed, so we felt we needed to include the special ed piece as the carve out. Remember,
right, but we carved out both because we said, oh, inclusion, and we're going to create this caveat of I'm not sure who falls there, and then special ed too.
Well, because inclusion, DEI inclusion is not the same as inclusion for special education. So that's still the holdover from that piece.
Yeah.
That's why it's in there.
That's right. I tried to create greater clarity, so we're not having this this question mark around the word inclusion, but just saying this is what we want to teach.
Right.
But I guess my question is this the 328? If without 328, are we not teaching about inclusion of students? I don't think that's the case.
I would argue that if you're teaching about inclusion, especially in special ed, you're not looking at 328 at all.
That's what I'm saying. So we can't to argue that here. I kept it in because I felt like it's part of that I don't know, that broader needs that people have, but certainly this is not where people are like, where's that law on inclusion? It's not, they're not running to this. They're going to the special education laws. So anyways.
Okay. Next I have Member Kelly.
Yeah, I'm going to just share an instance and to clarify in my mind why I think this is important. And Board Member Carey, this happened to me. As it's well known, I coached for many years. My athletes would very often, student-led, take a group of students and go have and say a prayer, and take the opportunity to do that, and that was a student-led thing that would happen on a fairly regular basis. I retired from coaching last year. The new coach that came in, one of the athletes, took that opportunity to, provide an opportunity for students to pray, and the coach shut that opportunity down. And so, if we're going to pretend like they're being allowed that opportunity, there's still, this is where the training and the education of our staff and our teachers and our personnel, I think it's important that they understand. I made sure when I learned that happened, that was against the law, and that those students have every right to do that, and that should not be shut down. But if it's happening, the year after I stepped down as the coach, it's happening elsewhere as well, and I think it's important for us to make sure that faculty members, staff members, coaches, etc., understand that the students do have that right.
Next, I've got Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board Member Kelly, for that. So one thing I do when I go and I speak to groups, I ask them, I say, is this true or false? State law and board rule requires "In God We Trust" to be placed in every school building in the state of Utah. And I just asked this in my church on this past Sunday. And there might have been 60 people in the room. And I said, by show of hands, how many of you think that state law and Board of Education rule requires "In God We Trust" be posted in every building? Not in the school, in every building in the school. Not one hand went up to say that that was a true statement. But that's in our rule. And to me, that's evidence that 50 years, close to 60 years of teaching our faculty, of teaching our administrators that there is this insurmountable separation between religious belief and right of conscience and the school door. That's the toll that's been taken. They can't even believe it. They can't believe that "In God We Trust" is required to be in a school. And to me, that's evidence that more than ever, we need to make sure that, and again, this isn't optional in a way, right? This is law. This is the law of the land. And we need to make sure that our teachers and our educators understand that, so they're not creating legal jeopardy. But more importantly, because I don't want them denying the rights of these students in their schools. And I believe this gets us there without being overly prescriptive. Board Member Lear's right. This isn't a model policy, because I think some of our best lawyers work at LEAs. And they're smart enough to know, well, how should we teach this? How should we teach our teachers this? And I think this is the best way to do it. Give this general, broad understanding of this is what this board wants. You work out the details. You work out the finer points. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we have Member Davis.
Yeah, I have an amendment. I just have to make sure I get the right lines. I move that lines 56 through 59 be added after the words as new lines after the words "least restrictive learning environment" on page 7 or number 78.
So the motion is to reinstate lines 56 and through 58. Is that correct? But move them to after line 78. So would that be, so right now they're currently, you've got an I and a double I. Would that still be the case under 78? Or would that be its own D and E?
I don't know. It would,
Okay.
however it fits in with the format of the document.
Okay. I think if I'm looking at this in context, I think that it would stay as an I and double I, but I could be wrong under that section, and I'd look to a policy writer rather than myself.
Well, oh yeah, it might, because it would be C1 and then C2, I suppose. And I would, or it just would continue on that language and say "including," and then add those two pieces. That's probably the better way to go.
It's your motion.
Let's do that. Let's say "including," and then add those two pieces.
so verbose, and I think that language is better than language.
I think because there's more to C than just special ed. Because they're saying you could have poverty, first generation, different, all these other things, skills, backgrounds, development.
Jenny said that was all about special ed. That it had nothing to do with anything else except special education.
All of C.
That was my.
That's what I took from our inclusion.
Yeah, so if that's the case, I think the stronger language is to restore that language into Lee Bulbs. That is your motion. You do yours.
I would keep it and put after environment, put the word including, and then add little 1 and little 2.
But it doesn't, including a student with a disability is educated? That's including a student with a disability.
It would, basically, because what it's saying is including that a student with a disability is educated with peers without a disability to the maximum extent appropriate.
Students, we have to insert that. Okay.
Well, I don't know if you necessarily need to, including it in normal conversation you would, but in the way this is written, I think it would be okay to just do including colon, comma, semicolon, whatever's appropriate, and then a little subset. A student with a disability is educated with peers without a disability to the maximum extent appropriate, consistent with IDEA, and specially designed instruction is provided in addition to, not instead of, high quality core instruction, because these are two key pieces that we wanted in this training every year when they are also training on other types of federal and state laws in the space of all of these students, not being discriminated against for religion or whatever. So that's it.
Okay. So we have, I just want to make sure that we have this correct here. Who's driving this motion? How are we getting this motion on the screen?
In the event that a student with a disability is educated with peers
Yeah, what we've seen today, I think this has taken some time, is that we're
could say
trying to
students
articulate motions while
with
speaking to
disabilities
motions.
are.
And so we need to get a motion together that we can put on the floor, debate, and vote on.
Chair,
Please.
to address Board Member Booth, on the line 56, could we just change those wordings to students with disabilities are educated? Instead of singular, make it plural. That's it on 56.
And that would be along with your move,
In the
right?
amendment, within the
Yeah.
amendment, yes. They added the word that, so maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe it sounds okay now.
Does that work, Member Davis?
Oh, they can leave it because they added the word that in.
Okay. So the motion to amend then is that the board amend R277-328 by adding after line 78, environment, including, that's the addition, I, that a student with a disability is educated with peers without a disability to the maximum extent appropriate, consistent with IDEA, and double I, that specially designed instruction is provided in addition to, not instead of, high-quality core instruction as consistent with IDEA.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, do we have a second to this motion?
Second.
There's a second. Do you want to speak to that, Member Davis?
Kind of similar to what has been mentioned by Vice Chair Bollinger. I'm fine to add in all of the religious pieces to all of the pieces that students should have protections for. They should. But I'm not okay losing, in particular, these two pieces in this training when we're looking at training about, equal educational opportunities for all students. These are really important pieces, and they're important for a general education training to be a piece of this larger picture of things, and they shouldn't be let go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we do. So, sorry, the question was, we're ready to speak to this motion? Here's who I've got in the queue. I've got Vice Chair Bollinger, Member Brinton, Member Hall, and Member Bogus. But that was in the queue before this motion came. So, Member Bollinger to this motion. Member Brinton to this motion. Member Hall, Member Bogus. To this motion, go ahead.
Chair, so my question is perhaps directed to staff. I don't know who it's directed to, but I'm wondering if when we're training on constitutional rights, are we actually supplementing that training with special education training? Because I've never actually included those, been subject to those rather, in the same training session. All of my special education training comes in a session all by itself, and all of my training on constitutional issues comes separately. So if we're mandating this, then we need to hold LEAs accountable for it to include it in that constitutional section. But I don't believe that it's happening, or at least that's not been my experience. And I don't think if we were to survey the system at large. So I think my question is, when we provide that training to districts, are we including that? Are we blending those together? Are we not? What is happening?
Is that you, Elise?
Can be.
Ish.
Elise Newey, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. My reading of the rule is that it does not specify when and in which training, it just that there has to be training. So my reading of it would be that LEAs would have the flexibility to include it wherever they see fit, as long as it meets the requirements of the rule.
Can I follow up? So then are we going to delete the training mandated in the other rule? Or are we going to mandate training in two places?
I will say that we often in our rules require, for example, things like policies, that there needs to be a policy about this and a policy about this. And we allow LEAs to combine those if they choose, right? Like discipline and bullying. They may have a policy that is an umbrella for both. And I think training is a similar one where we require there must be trainings that hit on this and this and this and this topic. Do with that with what you will as an LEA, given your local situation.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a motion. I'd like to stay in the queue.
So the motion before us then is Member Davis's motion to amend. Member Davis, are you speaking to your motion here?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I kind of did already, but if you're giving me a chance to add another little bit, I will. And that is that how big, I don't know if Leah Voorhees is here, but I was going to ask her how many pages, what I call the Golden Bible per se, or the Golden Handbook for Special Ed, how many pages is that? The LRBI? The LRBI. Well, no, more than that. It's the whole rules. The Golden Rules. What? How many pages? Like 300 pages. So we have massive amounts of special ed that, yes, we need to do training on. These two particular pieces right here speak to the culture of the building, which is a lot of what all of this is about. They're saying, you know, people with certain religious beliefs need to be able to speak up. Absolutely. People who may have a disability need to be able to be, to the maximum extent possible, not just a little here and there, to the maximum extent possible, included with their peers. And it's not like we're going to have resource and miss out on all of the high quality core instruction. It's that we're going to use that to supplement, because we want these students in with us learning every day. This is appropriate for this particular training, whereas all the other special ed stuff is appropriate. And they can add this in with all of those other 300 pages too into that training. But this piece is so important to this, what we're talking about here.
Okay. Any other comments to this motion? All right. Let me restate and we'll get ready for a vote. The motion is that the board amend R277-328 by adding after line 78, environment, including I, that a student with a disability is educated with peers without a disability to the maximum extent appropriate, consistent with IDEA. And double I, that specially designed instruction is provided in addition to, not instead of, high quality core instruction as consistent with IDEA. Let's vote. Vice Chair Wood,
Yes.
thank you. That motion passes 12 in favor, 1 abstention, 2 no votes. The abstention from Member Carey, the no vote from Member Brenton and Member Hymas. That brings us to the the underlying substitute motion, which is that the board continue R277-328 Equal Opportunity in Education Draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Let's go back to the queue here. We've got next, we have member, I don't know how your lights have changed, unless they've gone on and off. Because I'm writing them down. I'm going to go off of what I wrote down, not what's on the screen, if that's okay. So next I've got member Brenton.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. I wanted to see about the title of this in general, and I just wanted to ask the maker of the motion, like, I'm wondering why equal was struck out, and let me see. I wanted to make an amendment maybe would equal educational opportunity be a more appropriate title that would bring that all in? Or just leaving the word equal in?
It looks like of the two sponsors of this, Member Carey reached for his mic and Member Earl's in a conversation. So Member Carey.
Yeah, so it's my understanding, is it currently called Equal Opportunity in Education or Opportunity in Education? And you'd like to make it Equal Opportunity in Education?
Either I either want to put equal back in there or just say equal educational opportunity to shorten it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Chair. If you want to call it Equal Educational Opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Or equal opportunity in education, which is.
I think the latter is better because we're not talking about specific opportunities, we're talking about how.
Okay, so then I would just make a motion to put equal back in there.
In all spots.
In all spots.
So.
In all spots, yes.
And your motion is to reinsert or, yeah.
Yes.
The word equal.
If you can help me to restore equal. I think the debate has been, Chair, if I can speak to this real quick. Okay.
Let's get a second if we have one. There's the second. Okay, back to you.
The debate has been between what our role is. Equity has kind of taken over the last little while versus equal opportunities in education. So I think that just makes it clearer. That's our focus.
Okay. To this motion, in the queue, I have Member Hall, Bogus, Earl. To this motion, Member Earl? Okay. No, not yet. And Bollinger to this motion? Okay. With that, then, let's go ahead and tee this up for a vote. And the motion is that all references to equal be reinstated. Let's go ahead and vote. Oh, Member Bogus, to this motion, go ahead.
I think it's important that we say line 2 and line 30. Because if we reinstate everything, then we're going to reinstate lines that have been struck. And I don't think that's the intention of the motion. So if I could just amend the motions to say on line 2 and line 30, and I did a quick search, and I don't believe there's any other instances that would need to be reinstated other than those two.
It's got to be line 32. Line 32 as well,
In the definitions?
or line 32 too?
Yes.
Yes.
Line 32, I apologize.
Okay. Is that
And if we
good?
could
Is
just
that
pass
good with
that
you,
without
maker of the motion?
objection.
Is that good with
Thank
you,
you.
seconder of the motion? Yes. Okay. So the motion is that the references to equal be reinstated in the title, which is line 2, and line 32. Let's go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Wood?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll let that one go.
Thank you, yeah.
won't file any complaints on that one.
And we need one more, member Reel? Okay, that passes unanimously. And again, we want to make sure that 46 is included in there as well, and that should capture our intent here. Okay. With that, we're on to member Hall.
I wanted to take a moment to speak in favor of the overall motion, and especially the language, the religious language that's in there. And Cole, honestly, the story that you told, it really helped solidify for me that this training needs to be done with our teachers. Just to that coach's credit, I mean, he probably didn't know any different, and so he may have thought he was putting his job at risk by allowing those kids to go off and play. And so I think it's important that our teachers, since all the laws, these laws have been changed over the last few years, have the opportunity to be re-educated in this area. I did not know that "In God We Trust" had to be displayed in every building until Joe told me. And I've been going and visiting schools and saying stuff like this to principals. Man, thank you for the courage, to put that up on the wall, not knowing that it was actually in law, that it was supposed to be up there. And of course, they're taking the credit for it too along the way. But I had no idea it was supposed to be in law. And you know what? My pastor didn't know it was supposed to be in law either. So I think it's just I think this is great. I think it's a great opportunity for our educators, our administrators to be able to learn how to serve our students better in this area. And I think it's going to be a benefit overall to be able to do it.
Thank you. Next, we have member Bogus. Or no, are you? Okay, member Earl.
Yeah, two things. We have, there are two technical changes that need to be made, or maybe the staff can just make those. There's an incorrect reference in here unless we updated the references. Sorry, let me find the lines. Yeah, instead of 53B 118, they've changed the code. It's 53H 1504. And you can just verify that, but I think that's just making sure it's the right code. If I can make a motion if you want, you can do it. Okay, just make sure it's the right code. And then also on line 144, I believe we need to add a word "on" for that to even make sense. So it says allow for discriminatory treatment of individual students based disaggregated. I think it's supposed to say based on disaggregated group data. Is that right? Okay, so those are just technical changes. I'm just maybe drawing your attention to. I'm not making a motion. I'm just drawing attention to those so that staff can make sure those are correct. And then the last thing I wanted to draw attention to is that in March of 2021, this would need to be updated, but we actually have resources available currently for this training that have been put out. So it's Utah laws recognizing constitutional freedoms in the schools. And it answers questions like this. Does teaching about religion violate the separation of church and state? And it provides information for educators. Can an educator share beliefs regarding religion or a theistic, agnostic, or atheistic belief? So we already have resources for this that I think provide that. It would need to be updated because we've had a few laws passed since then, and I think even nationally there's been some updates. And what I'm saying is that I don't think this is this major lift and it's going to be this huge thing. I think that we have things available that could be updated in the next little bit, so it's available for people. Thank you.
Do you want me to go or do you? Can I just point out something, and this is to the makers of the draft. So this would be to Joe and to Jenny. Line 39, this is the second definition. Important governmental interests means the same as defined in section 53B-1-118. I'm not opposed to any of that, but I don't see it anywhere else in the rule, so I'm wondering if it's necessary. I just did, quite honestly, I just did a quick search. I typically do that with definitions just to make sure that it's used if we're going to define it. But if it's not used, then it might as well stay in the code. So I'm not sure if there was a purpose behind that. If not, I'll just move to have it removed as there's no meaning for it. Or we could add the definition of principle. That's not in there either. We just throw some stuff in there. Well, that's what I'm wondering if there's anything that you guys saw. Like I said, I'm happy to make a motion to remove it. I'm not putting anything on you. I'm just saying, was there something that you guys saw? Sure. So I'll just quickly make a motion then that we just strike lines 39 and 40. Before I do that, I'll ask staff. I don't know if any staff worked on this where you felt that definition standalone was important to be in there. Was there any staff back there that? Okay. So that's my motion, if I could. Did you find it?
Yeah. It is. In fact, my search says 6 times.
My search, important governmental interest. There it is. Okay. I don't know why my search didn't work.
It could be because you had a misspelling. It often does that for me.
I don't misspell things. Okay. With that, then I will back off and we'll move over to Member Bollinger.
So when I search it,
Okay, thank you, Chair. I do have an amendment as well. Let me get to it. So as I read this the way that it's written, now that we've added some additional pieces on lines 64 through 66, it says an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff regarding students' constitutionally protected rights relating to religious liberty, religious expression, and freedom of conscience in public schools. Then it goes on to say the professional learning described in this subsection shall, and it goes on to, it does talk about religious expression, religious exercise, religious liberty, but now we also have the pieces about instructional practices. It has, now we've added in the parts about IDEA and inclusion of students. So I feel like that parts of this is redundant and not applicable to everything in this, and it's already addressed. So I would move to strike on line 65 through 66, relating to religious liberty, religious expression, and freedom of conscience. So it just reads, regarding students' constitutionally protected rights in public schools.
We got a motion getting put together. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I just see it as duplicative because, well, I guess I should wait for a second before I should have explained.
Is your motion correct here? So the motion is to strike 65 and 66 relating to religious liberty, religious expression, and freedom of conscience?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have a second? There's a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's just redundant in the fact that those things are already listed in what they have to have training on. And in that context at the beginning, if an LEA is going to read what they have to do professional development on, it doesn't include the other parts and pieces, where if they go down and look at it, then it includes all of the parts and pieces. So I just think it's duplicative and it's not necessary.
Okay. Member Carey?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this motion is a prime example of like the tail wagging the dog. This was meant and designed to require teachings of religious liberty, religious freedom, religious expression, and that it's these constitutional rights in particular. The argument was made, well, you know, we had the IDEA in here before, let's put those provisions back in. And that request was accommodated. And now we're saying that since those provisions are in this rule, we should take out the language about constitutional protections and provisions for religious expression and liberty. And so I would speak against the motion because we have rules, several, dedicated to the IDEA and special education and the needs and the requirements. And to turn this rule, which is specifically designed to really hammer home that after 60 years of this thought that, hey, you have to check religion at the door, to now make the argument that, well, we should take those religious references out because they don't apply to the IDEA, strikes me as, again, this tail wagging the dog. I understand the logic of what's being said, but again, I think it misses the point that this board has the opportunity to really say, we understand that for the first time in 60 years, there's a different legal standard when it comes to these topics of religious freedom and religious liberty, and I just don't want to see them diluted at all. We have treated these kids of faith, students who have wanted to exercise religious freedom, as second class for 60 years. Let's send the message that that's no longer the standard. It shouldn't be the standard in any school in any state, but let's make it clear that it's not the standard here in Utah. Thank you, Chair.
Member Brenton?
Could I just ask the maker of the motion, the way that you stated it, you're saying that like 64 through 66 is repetitive because it's already mentioned in 81 through 83. Is that what your meaning was?
If I may, Chair. Yeah, what I'm saying is the way the rule's written is the very first line, so 64. So it starts out saying an LEA should provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff. And then part 2 says, here's what all the training has to be on. And so for me, it's saying we have to provide training on the constitutionally protected rights relating to all of those things. And then we're saying, and the training has to include, like, shall include these things. So we're listing again all of the religious parts. So it says on line 69, religious expression, religious exercise. On line 73, it talks about religious liberty. On line 80, it talks about religious expression. And so what I'm saying is that those words are already required in the training. So to be clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't train on those things. Okay. But what I'm just saying is in the rule writing, we typically try not to repeat ourselves. And that's what it's repeating, and it doesn't clarify that it's on all constitutionally protected rights in schools. It's just specifically to those.
Okay, thank you.
Member Davis?
Is there a way to keep all of that, Chair, and make clear that the training is on all constitutionally protected rights? Because I did get the same confusion when I read it. I was like, so are we only training on the freedom of religion piece? And by the way, I was a teacher for years, and my students always prayed. I did extracurricular things, and they prayed before every time, and that was 20 years ago. So it may be in some pockets, but there are also pockets where this is alive and well, and we should keep it that way. But I hope that those who respect these rights out there feel that they're seen as well, that not every teacher is trying to, and if they are, they shouldn't be, and that these are good things. But if there's a way to keep this important language and somehow make it clear in the beginning, and maybe I need to take my light off and work on an amendment, that this training is on constitutionally protected rights, which are many, and these are included and so important. That would be, I think, would get to what I'm hearing, because I had the same little thought when I read it. I thought it read weird because it put it right after the word training, it went from super specific to a general to super specific. So I thought if you start general and then put all the specifics, but if there's a way to do that and keep these important words, that would be the ideal, I think. I'll look at it and maybe put my light back on again.
Member Bogus?
It has nothing to do with this motion.
Okay. Member Carey?
Thank you, Chair. The focus for me should be on religious rights and religious liberty and religious expression. The concern is when we say, and Board Member Davis said it, there's a lot of constitutional rights. And when we start teaching a lot of these, right, as it was described, all these rights, what percentage of that time is relegated to this massive change that's taken place in terms of religious liberty and religious freedom? And so really by saying, well, we want to talk about all these rights, maybe religious freedom gets 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I would rather focus, this is where the big change has taken place. This is where the educators really need to be reinformed about the change. The other changes that have been made in terms of, the right to petition your government, that's a right? The right to assemble, those have been covered. And the changes haven't been as stark. When we talk about religious liberty and religious freedom, you are talking about a monumental change. And because of that, our educators and teachers deserve the time to focus in on that area. So again, I see this as a dilution of the purpose of the rule. It's not to say those other rights aren't important, but the huge change that's taken place is in this area. So let's not dilute or divert the time or energy to protecting these students and making sure that this message gets through our educator programs. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, can we just pull up lines 64 through 67? Can we just put those on the screen for a second? I think I'm understanding what's happening here. The argument from what I'm hearing is not should we talk about protected or train about protected rights or relating to religious liberty. If you look at one, it says an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff, right? And then section 2 says the professional learning described in subsection shall, and then it goes through this list, A through, was that E? A through E of things that are mentioned in there. So where was B, included instruction regarding applicable federal and state constitution? Is that not already, the question is not, are we removing things? It's, are things duplicative? And I would argue, yes, we're not watering it down. We're just saying one is duplicative of two. This is simple rule writing, right? If we really want to hammer it home, I mean, I guess, but I think we're missing the point here. Either that or I'm missing the point. One says an LEA shall provide professional learning. 2 says the professional learning described in this subsection shall. Okay, they're all listed there. That's what I think I'm missing here. So I'm in favor of what Vice Chair Bollinger's motion is saying, because it's, to me, again, simply duplicative. We're not removing any of these religious expressions, unalienable rights or exercises. We're spending a lot of time on just trying to remove duplicity. So that's my thought on this. I've got. She just wants to remove section 1, 64 through 66. Yep. If we could show those lines. Yeah.
And it wasn't removing all the lines. It was just the words that were duplicative. It was just striking relating to religious liberty, religious expression, freedom of conscience. So it would still read that this is the line that's really important that says they shall provide professional development on these constitutionally protected rights in public schools. And then it goes on to list all of the constitutionally protected rights and what has to be trained on.
Yeah, not that we're tag teaming this. We should high five, right? Yeah. My turn. yeah, we shall provide professional learning, and then it says in 2, the professional learning described shall, and then all these things beneath it.
And then can you just scroll up?
Can we scroll up a little bit down to, so we get E in there? Or are you up? Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Okay, let's continue on. Again, we're on this motion here, and that's Vice Chair Bollinger's motion to essentially end section 1. I can't remember what the exact motion is, to remove some duplicity here. I've got Member Bogus and Member Davis to this motion, or are you guys next? Oh, duplicity is not the right word. Duplicative.
Sorry, I thought the first time I let it go.
No, you shouldn't have let it go the first time. I need to, that's not even a technical change. That's just wrong. Okay, to this motion, Member Bogus, to this one, or you're in the queue for the,
I guess it technically is to this one if you want to.
there's nothing technical. Member Earl?
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Member Bogus, do you have?
Well, yeah, I kind of do. So I hate to be the bearer of semantics here late in the afternoon, but special education is not a constitutional right. In fact, education isn't even mentioned in the Constitution. It's a statutory right. So if we do this and we go straight to constitutional rights, then we would kind of be obligated to delete the special education stuff. If we're getting into, rule writing, or we need to create a whole new section for the special education stuff. So, and I do have a pseudo motion for that, but just kind of food for thought as we move forward here, that it's a statutory right, not a constitutional right.
Sorry, Member Earl, I called on you and then went back. Go ahead.
Member Davis.
I mean, I don't know. I was going to say we're even duplicative in saying, on 1, that we're going to provide professional learning. Then on 2, we said we're going to provide professional learning. I mean, you could strike line 67, and if it passes, if the amendment passes about, taking out that top piece, it would just be protected rights, including, and then strike line 67, because we say professional development, and then we say it again. Okay. Do I just amend hers? And so I would amend that we add including after right. Well, except for we got to wait for that to pass, right? If it,
You can make an amendment. You can amend her amendment.
okay, well, I would have put including after rights and strike line 67. That would be an amendment to her amendment. Well, that's her amendment's up there, right? Yeah, sorry. It would be adding the word including after constitutionally protected rights, and then striking line 67, which says the professional learning described in this section shall, because we say that twice. We say it on line 1 and line 64 and 60.
So is this your motion, Member Earl? Is this correct on the screen?
Can't see it. Yes.
So there's a motion to amend the amendment, and that is to add the wording, or adding the word including after rights, and strike line 67. So it would be so the overall, that's the amendment to the amendment. Let's go ahead and do that. Do we have a second to that? There's a second to that. Do you want to speak to that, Member Earl? You think you did? Okay. So yeah, and this is an amendment to Member Bollinger's amendment, right? So we would have to, if that passes, if it doesn't pass, then we're back to the original text, but. Is this what it would look like between Jenny and Amanda? Is this what it would look like? Well, why would we have A? Sorry, what would A? From what I understand, one would still remain because it would say, one would say an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff regarding students' constitutionally protected rights. And then 2 would read the professional learning described in this section shall, and then your A. Or no, you want to. Okay. I see. Okay, so you would remove 2. So it would say, an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff regarding students' constitutionally protected rights in public schools, including, and then your A through E. Yeah, we'd have to adjust the beginning of each A through E, right? Because you wouldn't have including recognize that students.
Right, and fix the verbs.
Okay. I can't. Are we gonna?
We are like 4 hours behind at this point. It's yeah, do every line anyway. Let's get it right.
Okay, there's a question, and I'm just throwing it out there. So I don't know if there's gonna be tons of debate. Then maybe we'll vote on this and then make this as a separate about adding constitutionally and statutorily protected rights. Some of those pieces that are included in 261 or are not necessarily are kind of.
Right, I think
I
that's
don't know
what
if there's a
member.
lot of discussion on that. Then I don't.
Well, that's what member Bogus was. She kind of alluded, I think, unless I just misheard you, that when we talk about special ed, that's not a constitutional right.
We can have that added in if there's. I just don't know if there's gonna be a lot of.
So.
Well, let's just do this, and then we can add that in. So if there is debate, then we.
So where are we at here? Remember, Earl, is this your motion?
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay, so the motion is to add the word including after rights and strike line 67. I've got member Lear and member Bogus. Is it member Lear to this motion? Okay, member Bogus to this motion. Okay, let's go ahead and, member Davis to this motion. Yep.
So can it be can the word statutorily be put in after we vote on this?
This is member Earl's.
Okay.
Yes, after this is.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
voted
just
on.
stay in the queue then.
Okay. So this amendment to the amendment, add the word including after rights and strike line 67. Let's vote. Vice Chair Wood,
No.
that passes 11 in favor, 4 against. Those against are member Lear, member Reel, member Carey, and member Wood. Let's go ahead and look at the amendment now reads. The amendment is to strike on lines 65 and 66 relating to religious liberty, religious something. We need to scroll up a little bit. There we go. So the motion before us is to strike on lines 65 and 66 relating to religious liberty, religious expression, and freedom of conscience, and add the word including after rights and strike line 67. That is the motion before us. Discussion to that motion. Member Lear to this motion. Member Bogus to this motion. Member Davis to this motion.
Yes, but then I also have the amendment after that. So I don't know if I have to get back in line if
Why
I
don't
make a
you,
comment.
if you'd like, no, you're welcome to make the amendment.
Oh, I can?
If you're amending this motion, yes. Or if you're amending the rule, then no.
I'm amending the motion.
Okay.
Well, I think- I'm amending the motion as amended. I move to add the word statutorily with constitution.
So you are
So it would read
swapping
regarding
out
students'
or adding.
constitutionally and statutorily protected rights.
Okay. So you want to add the words "and statutorily" on line 65. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? It's seconded. Do you want to speak to that, Member Davis?
It was actually Member Bogus's idea, but I thought it was a good one because there are things that are referenced in this that are statutory things, not necessarily in the Constitution, and also the IDEA piece was brought up as well. And then while I'm speaking to that, should I speak to the whole amendment or should I wait till we get back to the main amendment?
You should wait if it's
Okay.
not to this
I'll wait.
motion. Thank you. So the motion before us is to add the words "and statutorily" after "constitutionally." So let's go ahead and vote on that. Vice Chair Wood,
Yes.
okay, that passes 14 in favor, 1 opposed. That opposition coming from Member Carey. Okay, so here in the queue, I've got this brings us again back to Member Bollinger's motion as amended. So I've got Member Lear to this motion. No. Member Bogus to this motion. Member Davis to this motion. Member Bollinger, Vice Chair Bollinger's motion as amended. Okay, go ahead.
I would just like to put on the record, because some of those words that are being removed are important words. So I want people to hear on a public record how it immediately goes back into that. So it basically will read that an LEA shall provide professional learning to educators and relevant staff regarding students' constitutionally and statutorily protected rights, including recognizing that students do not forfeit constitutionally protected and unalienable rights to religious expression or religious exercise while attending public schools. And then it goes straight, that's what it goes straight into. So I just want to make sure that people understand how that reads now. How that there still is, an emphasis or priority based on where it's located in the rule.
Okay. So we have a motion before us that's been amended a couple times. The motion is to strike on lines 65 through 66 relating to religious liberty, religious expression, and freedom of conscience, and add the word including after rights, and strike line 67, and to add the words and statutorily after constitutionally. No other discussion to this motion. Let's go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Wood?
Yes.
Jenny, are you going to vote on your amendment?
That passes unanimously. Let's go back to, I've got two more in the queue before we take a final vote. Member Lear?
I'd like to propose an amendment on line 69, where the line numbers are probably are messed up now, but recognize that students do not forfeit constitutionally protected and unalienable rights to religious expression, delete or religious exercise, or freedom from religious coercion while attending public schools. Okay. Unalienable rights to religious expression, religious, delete or, religious exercise, or
It's basically deleting the or and adding
comma,
religious
or freedom from religious coercion while attending public schools. Okay, that's all right.
I can't hear and
It's just,
That's
write.
right.
it's just, it's a comma here.
Comma instead of the
After
or.
expression.
Remove or, and then religious exercise, and then comma, freedom from religious coercion.
And I think you need to say freedom from religious coercion.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do.
And then I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, so we're gonna cross this out and say or.
No, delete the or. Constitution protects an inalienable right and whatever that said before to religious expression, comma, and then cross out that or religious exercise and freedom from religious coercion.
Okay.
Because I think you need to add that in again. You just can't say religious coercion while attending public schools.
Okay. And I'm doing an Oxford comma. I'm really sorry. I know how you feel about that.
I'll survive.
Okay, got it.
Is that correct, Member Lear?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is to amend line 69 to read, recognize that students do not forfeit constitutionally protected and unalienable rights to religious expression, religious exercise. You want and or? You said or, but then you sat with the least and so
I
on.
think we can delete the or.
Well,
And because they're all rights that students are entitled.
you want that and in there then? So and freedom from religious
yes.
coercion while
Yes.
attending public
You've
schools.
got to have all three of those connected with an and.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a second to that. Go ahead, Member Lear.
Thank you. Everyone has their stories. My experience related to this coercion is a friend of mine who's Jewish and a judge, and her daughter was instructed in an assignment in her fifth grade assignment, to write her opinion and expressions of faith in Joseph Smith. And the friend contacted the teacher very politely and explained the situation. And the teacher said, oh, just tell her she doesn't have to do that. Tell her she just doesn't have to do that assignment. And the friend said, no, you don't understand. My daughter wants to do every assignment. She's very conscientious and she wants to do the assignment, but that's not our belief. And she doesn't want to have to express her belief in a person that she doesn't believe in. And the issue was eventually resolved that the teacher would not back down, but the administration backed up the mom, and a different assignment was given to the student, not to the whole class. But I think that illustrates that there is also coercion sometimes toward religious beliefs in public schools. And I'm sure if here might be of a certain religion, Boston might be of a different religion, California, different places in California might have still different religions. But my point being that there's two parts to that religious freedom. One is the free exercise clause, and one is the freedom from establishment of religion clause. So I think it's important to also help teachers understand that that's something they cannot do either implicitly or explicitly.
Okay. We have Member Carey next.
Thank you, Chair. We just spent maybe an hour talking about, how we want to get rid of, duplicative, thank you, language in the rule. And then now we're looking at creating duplicative language. This prohibition is already included in the rule. If we could just have whoever's driving call up lines 79 through 80. And I think it's clear that not only do we have to discuss this training with our teachers, it has to be emphasized. Not only discussed, but emphasized in the training. And what does it say? We have to emphasize the obligation of public schools to remain neutral toward religion, neither prohibiting nor inhibiting religious expression protected by law. And so I think, again, everywhere else we talk about promote, introduce, but with this particular language, we use the word emphasize. I chose the word emphasize because I want it to be clear that we can't favor, we can't coerce. And so I would say it's already in there. Let's avoid the repetition because outside of emphasize, I think that's very clear. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I've got Earl, are you on this motion? Jenny? No? Okay. Okay. Carol, go ahead.
Line 69, it's recognized that students do not forfeit constitutionally protected and unalienable rights. So this is a little different point, and that is that those are also protected constitutional rights. So I think it's important to say it here, as well as, and I appreciate the emphasis below, because I think that's also true. But I also think it's important to emphasize that it's a constitutional right, that it's not something that there is just an obligation for. It is constitutional.
Member Davis?
I think this might be a substitute, but I'm not sure, to change the word coercion to freedom from religious establishment while attending public schools.
No. What is it? It's already there.
Is that a motion? Is there a motion in there?
All right, that's it. We'll see what happens.
No motion then?
I'm trying to. I mean, it's a fair request, but I think the word coercion is going to be problematic. So I move to replace coercion with establishment and freedom from religious establishment while attending public schools.
So you want to replace the word coercion with establishment. That's your motion, is that right? Well, religious is already in there. Unless you want to talk about duplicative things, right? This conversation. Well, it would read, if she wants to replace coercion with establishment, it would read, and freedom from religious establishment while attending public schools. Is that what I'm understanding? So if that's the case, then we are simply striking coercion and replacing with establishment. Is that correct, Member Davis?
And I will note that I was not a complainer of the duplicity. So don't call me a hypocrite.
Thank you for that note. Is there a second to this?
I don't object to that. Christina will say there can't be friendly amendments.
Hold on. Member Lear, you're speaking against the motion off the mic, so I've got to keep going here.
I just want to make sure the language.
There's a second to this motion.
Can
Member
I
Davis.
make the language freedom from establishment of religion, so it's in line with how the establishment of religion? Is better? Well, because it matches the legal language, the constitutional language. Thank you. So it would say freedom from establishment of religion.
Okay, so the motion, if I'm understanding correctly, is to strike religious coercion and replace with establishment of religion. Is there a second? Okay, there's a second. Member Brenton, to this motion?
I just want to speak against this. That just doesn't even make sense to me in my mind. We have freedom. We're talking about the freedom of religious expression. And if we're going to bring in religious coercion to have freedom from religious coercion, I also think we would need to include religious or freedom from ideological coercion that happens often in our school. That we're trying. So anyway, I don't think establishment of religion's clear here.
Okay. Seeing no other lights on for this motion, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Again, the motion is to strike religious coercion and replace with establishment of religion. Let's go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Wood?
No.
Thank you. That motion fails. 12 opposed, 3 in favor. Those in favor are Member Reel, Member Lear, and Member Davis. So this brings us to the Member Lear's motion to amend. So the amendment to the amendment failed. The motion to amend is to amend line 69 to read, A, recognize that students do not forfeit constitutionally protected and unalienable rights to religious expression, religious exercise, and freedom from religious coercion while attending public schools. Let's vote. Vice Chair Wood?
Yes.
That motion fails. 11 opposed, 4 in favor. Those in favor are Member Reel, Member Wood, Member Booth, and Member Lear. And so this brings us to the rule itself. Member Bogus, you are in the queue.
Thank you, sir. I would move that we move line 79 through 83, just below line 74.
So you are wanting to essentially move C to the bottom?
Yes, C and all of its amended affiliates need to go to the end of this section. If you would like me to frame the motion that way, I can.
As short and sweet as possible.
Okay, then I would like to move C and its amendments
So all of subsection C.
to follow E.
Yeah.
Yes, please. That is my amendment.
Okay. So the motion is to move all of subsection C to the end of
Section 2.
Section 2. Subsection
Well,
2.
actually, it would be Section 3. We're getting sections and subsections screwed up, but as long as we know where it goes, I don't care.
So the motion then is to move all of subsection C to the end of section 2, or wherever it falls, but at the very end. Is there a second to this motion? There's a second. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I think part of our confusion is we put these lines 79 through 83 after the special education bit, and I think they kind of just get ignored, and we could have avoided a lot of these conversations had the language flowed. And I think if we're having these conversations, other people will have these conversations, and let's just move it up so that it follows it in a organized and flowing fashion.
Okay. Seeing no lights, the motion is to move all of subsection C to the end of that list. Let's go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Wood?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 14 in favor, 1 against, the opposition from member Reel. Seeing no additional lights, the motion before us then is that the board continue R277-328 Equal Opportunity in Education Draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Seeing no additional lights, let's vote.
Seven and a half hours.
Vice Chair Wood.
I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Yes.
This passes 13 in favor, 2 opposed, those coming from member Lear and member Reel. Back to you, Chair Carey. You better get this done.
We didn't. So, but that does conclude the law and licensing business. Thank you, Chair.
If it helps, I don't know who won, finance or law and licensing. Yeah, with that, we'll take lunch. I do want to share with board members a couple of things. One, we are grossly behind schedule. I didn't need to share that. You already knew that. The important thing is I have 2 guests who are here for executive session. At the same time, I've got staff who are here, right? Their time is valuable as well. I've got an AAG who is here that typically, Darren, welcome, that this is not his regular space, right? So we're kind of putting some pressure on some people, and I want to know what the board wants to do. If we want to move into standards and assessment, if we want to have move into, we've got the charter school. Yes, hello in the very back. Yeah, you guys have been waiting patient. Stacy probably would have been here anyway. But yes, so what do we want to do? We've got to figure some things out. Carol, go ahead. So hold on a second. Let me get you on a microphone here. Push a button for us, and Kelsey, there you go. Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
I would just propose we put the executive session, except for if the charter issue is in the executive session, then we do that today. It's not, then never mind.
Right, she's just doing your quarterly.
Okay, that's great. I just couldn't remember. But then we'll put off the executive session until tomorrow. Because then some of us who have new rules to read for today will be able to read the executive session materials tomorrow, for tomorrow.
Remember, Carrie, you have a light on?
Yeah, you indicated there might be 2 guests for executive. I just want to know who those are before the board makes a determination if we should postpone today or not.
That's our OLAG guests. No, they're those are our OLAG guests. And I would be fine to walk down and talk to them right now and see if that would help. So let's do this. Here's what we need to do. Sybil has kindly, you guys believe it, it's 6 o'clock. It feels like 11:30. It's 6 o'clock. Sybil has ordered some crackers and meats, some stuff. Let's take 15 minutes. I'm going to go talk to some people. We'll get a better idea of what we can do when we come back. Hang on a few more minutes, Charter. Thank you. And let's take 15, go get a snack, and then we'll meet back here.